Okay, so this is the section 5.1 practice, number 2K, and we'll finish off number 2 here, but these are a little bit longer. So let's look at what we can do. Um, so I don't know, for K, why don't we just square the top? Since there's a parentheses on top, the whole thing is squared. So if I square the top, that's really squaring each part of that product. So it becomes 2 squared times x to the negative 3 squared times y cubed squared all over 8x to the 5th, y to the 6th. So then the top, let's see, the 2 squared is 4. When I have a power to a power, I multiply the 2, so that becomes x to the negative 6th. Power to a power again, y to the 6th, all over 8x to the 5th, y to the 6th. Well, one nice thing is these y's will cancel. 4 over 8 turns into 1 over 2, so I've got a 1 on top and a 2 on the bottom. The x to the negative 6, to make that a positive 6, I'll put it in the bottom, so it's x to the 6th on the bottom, and then there's nothing left on top. And I still have an x to the 5th floating around on the bottom. So that's going to turn into 1 over 2, and then I have 11 x's multiplied together there. And the next one, let's see. Well, the whole top is to the negative 2. So if I move the entire, well, we can do this a couple ways. I could move the entire thing to the bottom and say it's that squared times this, and then it's just a 1 on top. Or I could distribute that negative 2 essentially on top, and so it becomes 2 to the negative 2 times x to the negative 3 to the negative 2 times y cubed to the negative 2 all over 8x to the 5th, y to the negative 6th. And then if I work that out, well, I don't know if I like it this way. Let's do it another way. Let's do it the way I first described. So if I wanted to make that a positive 2, I need to move the entire term to the bottom. So that's going to be 1 over 2x to the negative 3y cubed all squared. And then I've got 8x to the 5th, y to the negative 6 still on the bottom there. So then that's going to turn into 1 over. And then if I want to deal with this squared now, I'll apply it to each term in the product. So 2 squared, x to the negative 3 squared, y cubed squared, times 8 times x to the 5th times y to the negative 6th. So let's see what that turns into. I've got 1 over, and then this is 4 times 8, so that's 32. Power to a power, you multiply the exponents, x to the negative 6th. Power to a power, you multiply the exponents, and you get y to the 6th. And then here's another x to the 5th, and then a y to the negative 6th. And then if I move the negative exponent stuff on top, then I've got an x to the 6th on top and a y to the 6th on top over 32 x, or whoops, there's a y to the 6th on the bottom and an x to the 5th on the bottom. So then these guys cancel, and 5 of my x's cancel, and I'm left with 1 x on top, so I just get x over 32. Whoop, let me pause. Okay, let's look at part M. Let me shrink this down a little bit. Okay, so for part M, I'm multiplying two fractions together. When you do that, you just multiply straight across the top and straight across the bottom. So this is going to turn into, well, if we multiply across the top, I got 2 times 4 is 8. I've got x squared times x. Right? Well, actually, let's do this. Why don't we just simplify what we can first? So I've got x squared over x to the 5th. So that part right there will turn into an x cubed on the bottom. I don't know. Let's just write out the whole thing. So the top's going to turn into 2x squared y times 4xy squared. The bottom will turn into x to the 5th, y to the 6th, times 3x to the 4th y. Okay, well, let's simplify the top. I've got 3 x's multiplied together and 3 y's multiplied together. And then on the bottom, I've got a 3 floating around. I've got 9 x's all multiplied together. And I've got 7 y's all multiplied together. So now let's simplify. So the 8 over 3, nothing can be done about that. But I've got 3 x's on top that would cancel with 3 of the x's on the bottom, which would leave me with 6 x's left on bottom. And then I've got 3 y's on top, which would cancel with 3 of those 7 y's on the bottom, so I'd have 4 y's left over. And there we go. Okay, and then for part n, why don't we multiply across the top again? So it's 2x to the negative third y times 4xy to the negative 2 all over 8x to the fifth y to the negative 6 times 3x to the negative fourth y. Ugh. Okay, so we'll try this on top this time. If I take the 2 times 4, I get 8. If I take the x to the negative 3 times x, that's x to the first. Well, then I've got negative 3 x's and 1 more x, so that's really negative 2 x's. And then I've got a y and a y to the negative 2, so that's y to the first times y to the negative 2, so that turns into y to the negative 1. And then on the bottom, I've got an 8 times 3, which is 24. I've got an x to the fifth times x to the negative fourth, which is just x. And I've got a y to the sixth times a y, which is a y to the negative fifth. And let's do a little simplification. The 8 over 24 turns into 1 over 3. The x to the negative 2 I can put down in the bottom. So I've got x to the negative, becomes x squared. And the y to the negative 1 also can go in the bottom, so that becomes a y to the first. And then I have an x still in the bottom. And then I have a y to the negative fifth that I can move up as y to the fifth. Whoops. Right here. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, so now I've got y to the fifth over y, which turns into y to the fourth, over 3, and then I have x squared times x, which is x cubed. All right, hope that helps a little bit.